sister standing outside this lady's house, and I always remember because they're singing Christmas carols, and I always thought the expression on her face was slightly odd, but you tell me what you think anyway. So let's take a look through. Now we can tell that this is an old Ladybird book because it's got this loose leaf. Now I'm not an expert in these vintage books, but the more I've looked at them, these seem to be the older or the oldest versions. So I like to see if there's a date inside. Now this is obviously a second-hand book, and it says that it used to belong to King's School, Gloucester Library, or King's School Library in Gloucester. And the date on it is 1964, printed in England. So it is an old book. So let's have a look. Now there's quite a lot of pages, and the writing's quite small, so we may have to make a couple of videos, but we'll start anyway. Now, isn't that a lovely picture? It says, "A Christmas Scene in England." There we go. Every year in December we celebrate the birthday of Jesus Christ, by whose teachings all Christians try to live. That is why we call this time Christmas, because we celebrate the Mass or church service for Christ. Sometimes, if we are lazy, we may write Xmas. You know, my mother used to tell me off for writing Xmas. I never really understood why, but I kind of get it, I guess. The X stands for the Greek letter which in Greece is the first letter of Christ's name and frequently used there as a holy symbol. Now if I'd known that, I could have told my mother. At Christmas we remember that Christ taught us to love one another. We send cards and give presents to friends and relatives, and especially think of those less fortunate than ourselves. We watch and take part in nativity plays and carol services. We decorate our churches, chapels, schools and homes with green leaves, fir trees, paper decorations, candles and colourful electric lights. We eat and drink good things and generally have a happy time. Have you ever wondered why you hang up holly and not privet leaves? Why you have good things to eat, and why it is that you get lots of presents even though it is not your birthday? This book will tell you why we do these things at Christmas. Now, just a bit of a disclaimer for you before we carry on. I'm not religious myself. I was brought up to be religious, but it's something that I decided not to continue with as I got older. Okay, Christmas Day. Jesus was born nearly 2,000 years ago, long before accurate records were kept or birth certificates given, so nobody most places occasions for generally having a good time. The Christians often took part in them, for although they did not believe in a sun god, they wanted to take part in the fun and joy. But these festivals were not always happy occasions, for in some places animals were sacrificed. In the year 601 AD, Pope Gregory ordered Christians to no longer offer beasts to devils, but to worship God by feasting. As more and more people became Christians, they thought of Jesus as a bringer of happiness, and so they thought of him rather than of the sun at festival times. But this change of thinking took place very slowly. In the 4th century, when the Romans adopted Christianity, they celebrated the birth of Christ with great processions to church on Christmas morning. The first we learn of Christmas in England was in 521 AD, when King Arthur went to York Minster to remember Christ's birthday after he had won a great battle against the Danes. And here we have Christmas morning in Rome. The second 1,000 years of Christmas. In the Middle Ages, Christmas was a very jolly time. Great feasts were held, and the stern lords of the castles gave up their places to the lords of misrule, whose job it was to play jokes on people and keep everybody merry. When Oliver Cromwell was Lord Protector of England, and there was no king, the Puritan Parliament made laws so that people would think of Christmas only as a solemn time. Fun and feasting were forbidden, because the Puritans said that such merrymaking had more to do with pagan sun worship than with Christ's birth. They did not believe that people could worship God by having a good time. To be fair to the Puritans, we must remember that people often behaved so badly at Christmas that they used the festival as an excuse to be hooligans. Okay. Can I just also say, please remember this was written 56 years ago. Over half a century ago. Okay. You can imagine how many people hated the stern Puritan Christmas, and how great was the rejoicing when Charles II became king and allowed the old traditions again. The Scots disapproved of Charles II and kept to the Puritan ways. This is why Christmas in Scotland is not the festival that it is in England. Well, I don't know. That's debatable, really, isn't Christmas time in most schools and churches, children make a crib, that is, a group of statues showing all the people and animals who took part in the nativity story. This is a custom which came from Italy, and like many Christmas customs, began even before Jesus was born. For at the Roman winter festivals, clay dolls were sold in the streets of Rome to be given as presents. When many Romans became Christians, they probably bought dolls which looked like Mary, Joseph, Jesus, and other people of the Nativity story, and so in time dolls were specially made to look like these people. The most famous of cribs was that of St. Francis of Assisi, the good saint who was so kind to animals. He wanted people to understand how hard it was to live in a poor manger. He arranged to have a real live scene with people and a real ox and ass. This took place in northern Italy at Gracia in 1224 AD, and was followed by a service in which the saint preached of the birth of a poor king. So this says Italian children making their crib. Nativity plays. Today, most of us look forward to two types of play at Christmas time: a serious nativity play and a light-hearted pantomime or circus. These two types of entertainment show us how our Christmas is both serious and gay. Throughout history, watching plays has always been popular at holiday or festival times. Before people could read, watching plays was one of the few ways of learning. The people of the Middle Ages looked forward to watching plays made up from Bible stories. At first, these miracle plays, as they are called, were written by the priests and acted by their congregations. The nativity stories in these early plays are very similar to the plays that are performed in most schools today, before the Christmas holidays. Later, in the Middle Ages, these Bible plays were performed by ordinary people in the town marketplaces. These plays were acted on pageants, which were large carts that could be drawn by horses from one place to another. As these plays were no longer played in church, they included amusing scenes which would have not been suitable in church. And this is people watching a miracle play. Carols. A carol is a hymn which is full of joy and happiness. The word comes from the French carol, which was a dance, and long ago in England this word meant a dance used to celebrate the shortest day of the year. An early history book tells that about 100 years after the death of Jesus, the Pope wanted people to sing in memory of the birth of Jesus, but the first Christian hymns were not popular because they were sung in Latin, and only the priests could sing and understand them. It was at St. Francis's crib at Gracia, that carols were first sung in the language that ordinary folk could understand. The actors at Gracia composed carols to sing with the play. When the service was over, the singers strolled home singing, and so street caroling began. This singing of carols in words that could easily be understood spread to other lands. In England, carols were sung by minstrels in the halls of the great lords, and later by street singers. And so today this tradition is carried on in house-to-house caroling by groups of children and church choirs. And here we have the children from the front cover and the lady with the slightly odd look on her face. fastened to a door or window. This is an old American custom. Americans living in our country have hung holly wreaths on their doors, as they would do in America. Many British people have liked the idea and copied it. We always copy everything. It says a holly wreath on a door, an old American custom. Mistletoe. There is a very old northern legend which explains why we hang up mistletoe at Christmas. Balder, the sun god, was so fine and great that the other gods promised never to hurt him. They placed a spell on everything to take care of him. Water would not drown him, nor could arrows,